This video is brought to you by having a hair on your screen. This one. Let me get that for you. Spoilers for The Last Jedi, and I'll tell you why. This video is going to cover all the Easter eggs and references and cameos from the film, or at the very least, as many as possible. Perhaps if I've missed something, you can tell me in the comments what that is. Or if you think Disney's ruining Star Wars, tell me all about that. Which, they definitely are. Star Wars has always been great. Before Disney, everything that's ever been released. Just decades of redefining cinema again and again. An unstoppable juggernaut of quality content and merchandising. But hey, let's get into it. With all of these topics being the ones I'm going to cover. If you want to skip ahead to anything, there's time codes in the description. Okay, so up top, Luke Skywalker mentions that the first Jedi Temple on Act 2 was built 1,000 generations ago, hinting at how far back the Jedi Order goes, which lines up with what Obi-Wan said.
For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic.
But it wasn't just smooth sailing for thousands and thousands of years. In fact, Luke gets into how the legacy of the Jedi is a failure and hubris, which was pretty much what the Prequel Trilogy was about. I mean, it was also about pod racing and CGI flips, but to me, a lot of those films is just one really long narrative covering a series of bad decisions made by a pack of dummies in clothing far too billowy to fight effectively in. Next up, now I know a lot of people had a problem with Leia floating in space. It certainly looked weird, but I don't think it's too far out of left field for that character. We know that Leia has the Force. It was even mentioned in a recent book that Yoda wanted to train her over Luke. Also, moving yourself in the vacuum of space, that wouldn't take much effort in terms of using the Force due to the lack of gravity. And that's also if you ignore the freezing conditions and complete lack of oxygen. The red crystal Luke is seen with is a Jedi Crusader pendant. The Crusaders were led by the Jedi Knight turned Sith, Revan from the Old Republic, which effectively makes him canon, to some extent. The compass Luke is seen with makes its first appearance in the gambling machine with the video game tacked on, Battlefront 2, as an item stashed away in one of Palpatine's secret vaults. The idea of one throwing a projection of themselves using the Force isn't something first seen in The Last Jedi. It's actually something introduced in Star Wars Rebels, with this somehow weirder than normal looking Yoda making contact from across the galaxy. Also, Luke's green lightsaber. Where is it? It's impossible to say. I recently made a video speculating on when it would show up, but judging how he treated Anakin's lightsaber, he probably ditched it or gave it to R2. I'd be surprised though if we never saw it again. Right, some minor characters that show up include Nyan Num, Lando's co-pilot from Return of the Jedi, who also showed up in Force Awakens, Maz Kanata, this old dude Major Emat, and of course, Yoda. Now, Yoda's a fairly obvious mention, but I just wanted to point out that that was no CGI Yoda like the prequels. It was a puppet, like in the Tridge. And look, it's great to see Yoda again, but I haven't seen such a weird-looking Yoda since Star Wars Rebels. And I just gotta mention Chewbacca, because a big point of contention in The Force Awakens is that he just cruises past Leia after the death of Han Solo like it wasn't any kind of thing. But it was a thing. It was the thing that everybody remembers about that movie. Billie Lourd, Carrie Fisher's daughter, returns to play Lieutenant Cadel Connix. And I know that most people don't consider Finn's jacket a character, but I do. That jacket's been on a wild ride. First belonging to Poe, then procured by Finn, then making its way across the desert in the scorching heat, and then finally being slashed up the back due to the unfortunate circumstance of being attached to a man who was in a lightsaber battle. If you look closely though, you see that it's been sewn back together. Apparently this was done by Poe. Droids are back because it's Star Wars and Star Wars has droids, and some of those droids are back. PZ-4CO returns from The Force Awakens, a protocol droid like C-3PO, except this one's apparently designed to lurch awkwardly over a person when engaging in conversation. We see mouse droids with the First Order, BB-8 even replicating the noise of one when he has a trash can placed over him. The droid that's repairing Kylo Ren's face is making a similar noise to the torture droid from A New Hope, and it's so good at its job that it managed to shift Kylo Ren's scar a good couple of inches across his face into a much cooler position. Scar over the nose? No, thank you. That's not cool. Also, although in a minor role, R2-D2 is back because this is Star Wars. Interesting though, at this point, Luke is able to understand his bleeps and bloops.
If you're saying coming here was a bad idea, I'm beginning to agree with you.
Something that he couldn't in the Tridge. I'm never going to stop saying Tridge, by the way. And you know what? Feel free to use it. I love it. I'm going to go with it forever. Some of the vehicles we got are new ground assault vehicles, upgrades from the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, the Supremacy, one of the biggest Imperial ships to date, and Kylo Ren's TIE silencer, not dissimilar to Vader's TIE Advanced. For the Resistance, we saw more modernized versions of the Nebulan B frigate in the Nebulan K, something that looked a lot like a Corellian Corvette with a few tweaks, the name of which I do not know, plus, all the standard stuff, your X-Wings, your A-Wings, your land speeders and so forth, plus brand new bombers, presumably replacing the Y-Wings. The Resistance heavy cruiser is actually called the Raddus, a rebellion hero first introduced in Rogue One. I think it's time that we discuss the original trilogy. Yeah, that's right, I've abandoned calling it the Tridge. It never really felt right. Look, I lied to you, alright, I'm sorry. We see R2-D2 play Princess Leia's recording, asking one Obi-Wan Kenobi, that old dog, for help. And when she stuns Poe, she's seen in an all-white outfit like she was when she shot that first stormtrooper. We also see green milk, as opposed to the popularized blue milk, which is bantha milk. Talk about subverting expectations. I mean, they said this movie was going to be different, but I did... you never know what to expect. Finn and Rose say that they met through luck, something that old son of a bitch Ben Kenobi had an opinion on.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
They also escape through a sewer at one point, similar to what we saw in the first Death Star. From Luke, we get a, hey, if you strike me down, I'm gonna come back at you, but I'll be a ghost. And he also throws him a, see you around, kid, when he disappears. Kid being what Han used to call Luke. Also, DJ is given his credits in big old boxes, like Han did for rescuing the princess and delivering the Death Star plans. Also in Luke's final moments, we get him witnessing a twin sunset, or sunsets, just like in A New Hope. DJ is a character similar to Lando in cutting a deal with the First Order. Difference being, he doesn't come good, he just takes his money, he just buggers off. Luke and Leia have a mind conversation like they did on Cloud City. We see the return of those breather masks on the Falcon, and a Bacta suit, which is a more portable healing situation. Luke tells Rey that the Force isn't about lifting rocks, but clearly, sometimes it is about lifting rocks. Also, both Kylo and Rey see the future. However, as mentioned in Empire, the future is uncertain, and catching glimpses of it can mean absolutely everything or jack shit. Also, weird, unexplained dark side cave. We got that. I mean, I get why the one that Yoda had installed was evil, but this was just like a series of mirrors. Is it a message on the evils of vanity? It's tricky. Who knows? C-3PO also falls back on his love of telling people terrible odds.
Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
This time saying how the odds of finding the right way out of that old rebel base on Crate is 15,428 to 1. Yeah, that's right. I remembered the exact number. I thought that would impress someone watching this. If that impresses you, please let me know in the comments. I require the validation. Also, Snoke loses a hand because, Star Wars and hands. But I guess he doesn't so much lose his hand as he does lose his entire body and his hand. It's just fine. Apparently, Admiral Akbar says it's a trap before he dies. I didn't hear it, but hey, I'm including it. Rey reminds Luke of how he managed to turn Vader, and she's also put in binders like Luke was when she's taken a Snoke. That whole scene with Snoke, though, it's a massive parallel to Luke's scene with the Emperor. It's amazing the things that Snoke managed to tick off on the road to being cut in half. He calls Rey young Rey, like how the Emperor called Luke young Skywalker. He's all, your fleet's in a real bad way. I'm attacking them right now. Take a look at this. He's also got red guards to protect him. I mean, wisely, he doesn't send him away like the Emperor did, but didn't really do him much good, did it? He does the whole, it was I who set up the thing, and that's why you're here now with me. His thing being linking the minds of Kylo and Rey, and the Emperor's being leaking the Death Star plans. Rey also pulls a lightsaber blade a couple of times to kill him, like Luke did. But look how close Luke is when he does it. He could have just grabbed it. I mean, I don't mean to tell a person how to Jedi, but I feel like he was just using the Force because he's got it. Don't be lazy. Also, ultimately, it was both Snoke and the Emperor's own apprentice that did them in. Again, he should have really seen it coming. I mean, it arrived about a movie too early, but come on, man. Read the room. Also relating to Return of the Jedi, we hear the words rebel scum uttered a couple of times.
You rebel scum.
Once when Finn and Rose are captured, and once by Finn himself. Luke's door of his hut is also part of an old X-Wing, which we also saw submerged on Act 2. And the soundtrack also, a lot of callbacks. We get that moment where the Falcon is being pursued by TIE fighters. Leia's theme, Luke's theme, the Star Wars theme. There were so many themes. And don't believe for a second that the prequels were left out. We saw frogs hung out to dry, like on Tatooine. Kylo Ren does some spinning, because as we know, spinning, that's a good trick.
I'll try spinning, that's a good trick.
That kid with the space broom gives a good old woo.
Woo!
when kicking off the space horse racing. Racing is also a sport that we've seen before in this universe. A hangar bay is blown up from the inside with proton torpedoes. Kylo Ren has a cool scar like Anakin. We get Darth Sidious mentioned by name. Luke telling Ben that he failed him, just like Obi-Wan said to Anakin.
I have failed you, Anakin. I have failed you.
Luke also mentions how it was the Jedi that trained Vader. Also, Luke calls his lightsaber a laser sword, like Anakin called Qui-Gon's.
I saw your laser sword. Only Jedis carry that kind of weapon.
Perhaps I killed a Jedi and took it from him.
And we've seen dark side users be cut in half before. Anyone remember Maul from Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight? Also Darth Maul, I guess. But also Maul, remember Maul? Difference being though, those guys lived, but Snoke, no, he seemed very dead. We're not done yet though. We can also look beyond the movies and into lesser known links to the comics and the books and future movies and such. Phasma having her eye peer through a broken mask reminded me of seeing Anakin's face in Rebels. Also, the reason Finn didn't fall down that pit to his death when Phasma knocked him off is because there's little elevators in those shafts. Phasma should know that, but she's probably an idiot. Crate, the old rebel base, was set up by Bail Organa, Leia's non-biological, but far more emotionally stable Jimmy Smits, father. The gold ring that Snoke was wearing references 4 ancient philosophers that favoured dark side exploration. It also had a black obsidian stone in it, which came from the volcanic cave beneath Darth Vader's very scary castle for men who had a good thing going. And then they blew it. You really blew it, Anakin. You're such an idiot. DJ is a slicer, something introduced in the now defunct expanded universe. That rebel insignia ring that Rose had, that's from the days of the Empire, when senators would wear one to show others that they were with the rebellion. Alderaan might be gone, but on Canto Bight, there's Alderaan trees lining the casino, because nothing says opulence like nurturing trees from a planet that exploded. Speaking of trees though, apparently Luke found his way to Ahch-To, yes, bless me, by following the saplings of Force-sensitive trees. We've seen those trees before, once in the Clone Wars TV series, but he also retrieves a couple of them in the comic Shattered Empire. Also introduced in that comic was Poe Dameron's mother, her wedding ring Poe wears around his neck. Also, back to those trees, Blindy Sticko from Rogue One's stick is made from wood of that kind of tree. Luke Skywalker also mentions how that he's Luke Skywalker, a legend. There's also a book called The Legends of Luke Skywalker that tells a bunch of tall and probably inaccurate tales from his adventures. They could now probably add though, the time that he stood up to the might of the entire First Order, then disappeared, leaving everyone to go, what the hell just happened? Also those dice on the Millennium Falcon. I thought they were new, but they were first seen in A New Hope. Also, I bet my life, you know what? I bet the life of Nick Mason that they play a role in the upcoming Han Solo movie. Like maybe they're the pair of die that he wins the Falcon off Lando with. This movie also has a bunch of cameos. Gareth Edwards, the director of Rogue One, appears as the soldier next to the guy who tastes the ground on Crate and is like, salt! What if it wasn't salt? What if this was a planet covered in arsenic, you nitwit? Mark Hamill's 3 children, cameo, when Luke first appeared on Crate. Joseph Gordon-Levitt voices the character Slow and Low, also a reference to the Beastie Boys song Slow and Low. And apparently, this has been a rumour for a really long time, that Tom Hardy appears as a stormtrooper, but buggered if I know which one, or even if he appears at all. Also, 2 princes. Not the song, but the 2 princes William and Harry made a cameo, but it was cut out. Also, it should be noted that BB-8 is the character to say, I have a bad feeling about this, but he does it in bleeps and bloops. Talk about breaking conventions and flipping the genre, you know what I'm saying? Whoa. But if there's any Easter eggs I've missed, or if you have a favourite, it would be really great if you left it in the comments. Also, do you want to win a Jedi Challenges augmented reality Star Wars game thing? You know, that's the perfect gift for someone watching an Easter egg video. Or, someone who's watching a Star Wars Easter egg video. Yeah, I don't know. Or you can. We're giving one away if you listen to this Monday's episode of my podcast, The Weekly Planet, where we're also going to be breaking down The Last Jedi in great depth. All the good, all the not as good. It's going to be great. It hasn't been recorded yet as I record this, but it's going to be great. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.